Turn your to-do list into a gratitude list.
Gratitude,
Right,
right? To
right.
do
Tude,
gratitude list.
gratitude list.
Gratitude list. Yeah, exactly. Love
Yeah,
it.
so sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm like, "Oh, man, I have to go see this client." Well, I'm so grateful that this person trusts me with their public speaking development.
Right.
Oh, and then I have to go to meet my daughter's teacher. I'm so grateful that I have a flexible schedule that allows me to go meet my daughter's teacher.
Yes.
Today, we're talking about gratitude on part 2 of the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. Why and how to make it a practice. Hint, hint, it's good for you. Literally, physically good for you. So, we'll talk about that on the podcast starting now. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. It is Thursday, November 21st, the week before Thanksgiving, exactly 1 week before Thanksgiving. And I am Alegre of Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. If you are joining me for the first time, welcome. Beyond Your Wildest Dreams is all about empowering moms to prioritize themselves and their goals by learning how to harness the power of planning. Because as we say, planning makes everything easier. And with planning, everything is possible. And with planning, you can really live a life beyond your wildest dreams. And it's so, self care is so, so, so important. We have these 4 workbooks, which are all designed to be read in 45 minutes or less. And they're workbooks because, when Natasha and I wrote them, like, we know that you learn best by doing. We didn't just want to give you theory, we wanted to give you actual tools because, as the Surgeon General said earlier this year,
Mm-hmm.
parents are struggling with parental burnout, and the studies show that women are even more likely to feel this burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel like there's been a lot. Natasha and I have been saying that moms have been suffering from burnout for years. I think we've all known it anecdotally. It takes a little
Sure.
while for society and science to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
But, it was really huge when the Surgeon General came out with a health warning about the dangers of burnout.
Right.
We both felt really validated, right? We were like,
Oh my gosh, yeah. And like, we're coming into like burnout central part of the year, right? Because
yeah,
normally it's just holiday after holiday. And, stereotypically, the magic of the holidays lands solidly in mom's laps, generally, usually, right? For the most
yes.
part. So, yeah. So, even more so important to take care, self care.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, for those who are listening to the Harness the Power of Planning podcast, this will be episode 81 if you ever want to go back and listen. We do have a 1-page cheat sheet. So, we read this report that came out last year, 60 something page, 70-page
Yeah.
report,
Yeah.
and we consolidated down into 1 page. You can get that at tinyurl.com/BYWD stop burnout. Or if you want to click on that QR code, I know listeners love those QR codes. So go ahead and click on that QR code. I'm going to take it down though, because it's hiding Natasha's beautiful face. Yes, I don't
I
know why it's right there. So I'll keep the
Yeah.
tiny URL up so people can see it there. So yeah, get that, because as Natasha said, it's even more important during this holiday season when
Oh my
so much
gosh.
of the,
Mhm.
I mean, we want it to be magical, but who's it falling on?
Right.
Oh, that's me
Yeah.
making the
Yeah.
magic.
Like, spoiler alert.
Right,
There are
right.
no elves.
We are the elves.
we are the elves. Yeah.
So, okay, part 2 of the Harness the Power Planning podcast,
Yes.
gratitude
Gratitude.
and why it is good for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel like gratitude's been kind of a buzzword the last
Decade.
handful of
Yeah,
years.
for sure. And sometimes you're like, oh, you should develop your gratitude. And all I hear about that is like gratitude journal. And then I hear, more stuff to do, right?
Right.
So like, like, oh, you should be acknowledging and and there was a time where I was like, I need to work in a gratitude journaling session
Yes.
with myself daily. And by the way, I'm going to show y'all on the podcast won't be seeing this, but I got a tattoo of the gratitude symbol on my wrist 10 years ago on my 40th birthday, so that and I always talk about this. People are like, "Oh, what is that?" I'm like, "That's a post-it note to myself." Like, that's not about putting art on my body. That's like just a reminder, like, hey, so it's facing me. It's
Mhm.
gratitude. It's just like a lowercase g inside a circle, which by the way is the gratitude symbol. Just to remind myself to have gratitude, right? For something's not going great, or maybe I have a more pessimistic outlook on something, and glancing down on that or being reminded of that, like, there's a lot going on that's pretty darn good. The problem with
Yes.
the tattoo that you've had on your body for 10 years, you start to not see it after a while. It
Yep.
starts to become something you don't notice. So I'll have to get that tattooed somewhere else where I'll notice it more. Just just kidding. um
Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude all over your body.
Something, yeah, all over. But the research shows that it helps with diminished anxiety, with, if you have some kind of gratitude, I'm going to say practice because I don't really
Mhm.
know any other word to use. Um, or just acknowledgement of gratitude. It helps reduce anxiety overall. They say that there's like a 30, if you have some kind of gratitude practice, it can reduce like the amount of incidence of mental illness. I literally just read this morning because I was like, oh, we're going to talk about this. I'm like, I wonder what the research shows.
Mhm.
And I'm not coming at with hard numbers at the moment because I cannot remember them off the top of my head. But there is, if you Google gratitude research,
Yes, there's so much.
so much about why it's helpful for you for self-care, like we were talking about, but also just like your mental well-being.
Yeah. And honestly, the research it goes back over 20 years. Like gratitude, I feel like it's something to be aware of, the fact that mainstream acceptance of something lags by about 20 years when people have started saying, "Hey, I think there's this thing that might be working for people," and blah, and then they have to do all the research, which takes a long time. But, there are literally physical benefits of gratitude, including stronger immune system,
Amazing.
less body pains and aches, optimum blood pressure and cardiac functioning, and better sleep-wake cycles, which are probably all related to, like you were
Ooh,
saying, anxiety, right?
right, right. I mean, the mind
So
body connection is something that obviously exists, but
yeah,
the Western world doesn't know very much about it, I don't think, or as much as I think maybe some other traditions are aware of, but it's there. It's not,
it
it's not imaginary.
absolutely. And so for me, one of the ways that I've made gratitude a practice is partially because I'm not a good meditator. I I don't wanna say that because I'd like to think that someday I'll be a good meditator, but if you've been following us, it's something I've struggled with. And so, first thing in
You
the morning, I have tried to meditate, but when I have difficulty meditating, I'll simply think about all the things that I'm thankful for. And sometimes that's really easy. Sometimes it's easy to think about my relationships, my health, my safe home, that sort of thing. However, and this is a tip for anyone who's struggled with the practice of gratitude, sometimes you're just thinking about all the things you have to do that day. So, here is our first tip for making gratitude a practice: turn your to-do list into a gratitude list.
Gratitude, right? To
Right,
do
tude,
gratitude do list.
to-dude list.
Gratitude list. Yeah, exactly. Love
Yeah,
it.
so sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm like, "Oh, man, I have to go see this client." Well, I'm so grateful that this person trusts me with their public speaking development.
Right.
Oh, and then I have to go to meet my daughter's teacher. I'm so grateful that I have a flexible schedule that allows me to go meet my daughter's teacher.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then I have to go get diapers and a developmental toy because I've committed to doing that for the church for someone in need. I'm so grateful that I can share my abundance with this family. by getting these things for them.
Amazing. Yeah. So this is great. You don't need a journal. You don't need a separate thing. You don't need to
Nope.
practice. You don't need to set aside time. It's not one more thing to put on your to-do. You turn your to-do into a gratitude. And that's because yeah, you're gonna think about every day or even make a list every day or every if you follow always make it on Sunday, blah blah blah, whatever. But you're gonna come across mentally, oh yeah, I got to go pick up such and such, my medication, and maybe it's, I'm so grateful we have health insurance, or I'm so grateful that,
Yes.
that hormone replacement exists. Whereas, if it was 100 years ago, it's just like, deal with it.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, but that then you have that mental practice that meant just that little, it's just like a millisecond of turning your attention to it. And that's all it is. Like, you don't need to journal pages after pages in order for gratitude to work for you.
Yeah.
Really is just that mental awareness of, turning your have to into I get to, which is just, that just sounds like little verbal trickery, but it is, and it works. So,
Yeah.
and how we think about things really does, how we frame it does make a difference.
It
Yeah.
makes a huge difference, and to your point, again, going back to anxiety, like, I was in a mindset of, "Oh my gosh, I have to do this and that and this and that," and literally, I could feel my body calming, which probably speaks to the better cardiac, the
Mhm.
health benefits that science has shown that gratitude produces. So, don't just do it for practicing this ephemeral thing called gratitude. Do it because you're gonna feel better and
Yeah.
your body's gonna be functioning better because of
Yeah.
it.
You're just gonna kind of feel better about your life, right? Because sometimes it just
Mhm.
feels like, oh, it's stress and I have to do all these things, as opposed to, yeah, I get to do these things, right? And so that's such a great tip. It's just, and it doesn't take any time, extra time. It doesn't take any, physical extra thing that you have to do or add into your schedule. So
Yeah.
that's a great first tip. And also it's probably one of the most effective ones, right? Because it really is about a shift in mindset, which is ultimately, like you said, the thing that really affects these things you can actually track, like your health markers.
Yes. So my second tip for bringing gratitude into your life came to me from a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is a beautiful book. If you haven't heard of this book, I'll be
Mhm.
sure to add it
Mhm.
in the podcast notes too. So Breeding Sweetgrass is a book about indigenous wisdom, North American indigenous wisdom, and it's written by a biologist, and she is an indigenous woman. And the fascinating thing about her, I'm blanking on her last name. Robin was her first name, but Braiding Sweetgrass. And when she was going to get her PhD, she was thinking about, or when she was going to college, maybe it wasn't PhD, maybe it was undergrad, she was torn between biology and poetry.
Mm.
And that's why when I say Braiding Sweetgrass is a beautiful
Mm.
book is because I've never heard someone speak so poetically about nature. You can tell that she still practices poetry because it's just such a
Mhm.
beautiful,
Mhm.
compelling book. And she talks about how she grew up within a culture of gratitude where, and it's funny too because she talks about how, for instance, every day when her grandfather would make coffee, he would make the coffee and then he would offer the grounds to the earth in
Mm.
gratitude. And she just hypothesized that when you have a culture of gratitude, it really just ripples out in this huge way. And she talks about actually this like prayer of gratitude. It was a very ecumenical prayer, but this prayer of gratitude that she said was practiced in some of the schools that she was familiar with. And they were very much like, thank you that I have clean air to breathe. Thank you that I have clean water to drink. And yeah, thank you for those things, especially because we're starting to become aware of how precious and also how that's not a guaranteed thing, clean air and clean water.
Mhm. Right.
And I think about how it would, if all of us were saying this prayer of thank you for clean air, thank you for clean water, we'd also be thinking about that more,
Right.
right? Like, you
Right.
might not walk past that piece of trash as you're walking your dog. You might pick it up because, oh, this morning you were saying thank you to the earth for nurturing the soil that grows your food.
Yeah.
And and when you think about how many cultures have this practice of saying some sort of prayer of gratitude around meals, that was my takeaway. And so our family, whenever the 3 of us are sitting together, we do say a prayer of gratitude. And it's partially about the food, but it's also mostly about the gratitude. And we do say like thank you to the sun for nurturing the plants and to the for the rain for watering those plants and the soil for nurturing it. We get that basic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so that's become a really nice practice for our family and an easy way because it's just a reminder, right? Like, when it comes to habit formation, if you've heard us talk about habit formation, time and location are the strongest triggers for habits, and so us sitting together for a meal is just a really great reminder, "Oh, okay, here's our
Let's
moment
be
of
grateful.
gratitude."
Yeah, absolutely. This and another way to just work it in where it's not an extra thing to do. It's not something you have to remember to do. I mean, well, you may excuse me, you may remember it, but you're sitting down to eat this meal anyway. What we're talking about 30
Yeah,
seconds, 60 seconds, right? We're not talking about
yeah,
like, oh, go find my gratitude journal, go open it up, go write it, that kind of thing. So it's just
yeah,
another way to incorporate it, which I think is the best way, is to have it be something that's part of your everyday.
absolutely. So, those are our tips for gratitude and why it's so valuable to you. Feel free to check out the show notes that'll be coming out later today when we publish the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. If you want to click on any of, the science or the books that we mention. And also, we'd love to hear what gratitude practices you have. What's worked for you? What do you find really
Absolutely.
powerful?
I have a bonus tip, which is something that Allegra already does with her existing planner, which is to use that for not just planning, but also journaling, scrapbooking, and gratitude. I lately my schedule's been so crazy packed that I have to time block my day every day, right? And so I just it's been much easier for me to do on a piece of paper than in my planner. That's just kind of how life is running right now. And there is a little spot for what am I grateful for today. So just quickly write that down. It takes me 2 seconds to be like, what am I grateful for? Oh yeah. These are the things. Really simple, really, really simple, which I might have skipped over, right? I might have thought about it all day, what there is to be grateful for. But if there's a little prompt in this time blocking sheet, you can have a little space in your planner that like maybe you don't use the 5 a.m. line in your
Right.
plan. Maybe that becomes your gratitude line. And it doesn't have to be three things. It can be one thing. It can be three things. But maybe just go ahead and carve out a space that you already have in a thing that you're already using. Doesn't have to be special or different. It can be already incorporated into your everyday. But yes, we'd love to hear, how do you incorporate it? How is it? Maybe you have a special practice. Awesome. Share that with us. We'd love to hear about how you incorporate gratitude into your everyday.
Okay, so before we go, what are you grateful for today, Natasha?
I am grateful today for my internet connection, which sounds crazy, but my husband had to work from home today, and so I had to pivot, and I'm on my phone, and everything's been working really great. We
Yay.
have some technical issues. That's just because I looked at my Wi-Fi symbol right now on my phone, and it's full blast. Because sometimes it's
You look
not. So
good.
that makes things hard, right? So
Yeah,
when you're relying on technology, and today is going to be a really heavy technology day, and I'm glad my Wi-Fi is working.
there you go. I'm grateful that I am done with my grocery shopping
Oh my gosh,
ahead of
I
schedule.
I am not. So
Woo!
I can
Oh my
appreciate
gosh.
that for you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to listen again, check out the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. This will be episode 81. Thanks for being here and dream wild, wild dreamers. Thanks for joining us for the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen.